The new Super Mario Bros. Movie is out, and it's looking more and more like it's the harbinger of a bona fide video game movie craze. The nicest thing I can say about it is that it exists as a relatively faithful and attractive translation of the aesthetic of modern Mario games to film. It looks like a Super Mario game. It sounds adjacent to a Super Mario game, Chris Pratt notwithstanding. Does it have the same joyous exuberance of Super Mario at its best? Not really. Does it feel like an hour and a half of jangling keys for toddlers mixed with 12 basketfuls of Easter eggs for obsessed internet weirdos? Yes it does. But kids, you gotta stop crying for a Mario movie. We already have a Mario movie at home. A Mario movie that Nintendo would very much like you to forget. Look at Egg, they say. Look at Yoshi Egg. Don't think about,
Your father. The fungus.
1993's wild and wacky, almost genius, live-action Super Mario Bros. Is visually distinctive, narratively fascinating, idiosyncratically charming, and filled with earnest, imaginative artistry that functions as a beautiful time capsule of early 90s filmmaking. It's a flawed, gorgeous little film that, if successful, would have had an unimaginably positive impact on the major studio playbook for video game adaptations, because it was one of those wonderful, rare times when true madcap art escaped the ever-tightening grip of commerce. Doomed, visually distinctive career killers may be my beat. See My Defensive Mystery Men or Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow, for instance. And Super Mario Bros. Is no different. Its directors, Rocky Morton and Annabel Jankel, the creators of influential cyberpunk TV show Max Headroom, ran a notoriously cursed and disastrous production that wasn't really entirely their fault, but they were labeled the scapegoats, and they were fired out of a cannon into the sun after the film flopped, and the whole mess was swept under the rug and buried in the deepest reaches of the memory hole by all parties involved. Trotted out only for worst of lists and feature spots on How Did This Get Made. But there's something so fascinating about Super Mario Bros., coming as it does from a time before brands were hyper-protective of their intellectual property. And rewatching it made me ask a difficult question. What do we want out of a video game adaptation anyway? And what do we want out of any adaptation, for that matter? The common narrative around 1993's Super Mario Bros., directed by Annabel Jankel and Rocky Morton, is that it was an unmitigated disaster on every level, creatively, financially, and critically. A true case of too many cooks, the film was pulled apart by creative disagreements between the producers, writers, and directors that left the entire crew scrambling to salvage the production amongst a constant barrage of rewrites, rug pulls, and executive notes. But somehow, unlike many obvious disasters in the making, nobody phoned it in. Everyone above and below the line gave it their absolute best effort, and it shows. Sometimes pressure creates diamonds, or in this instance, cubic zirconium. Sapphire? Pieces of meteorite? Look, it's obvious the movie's not perfect, but in this story about Mario Brothers, our titular characters are played with conviction. Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo are locked in with a genuine brotherly chemistry that centers the film in some semblance of reality that allows viewers something to hang on to as the plot and setting get increasingly wacky. The pain of making the film brought the cast together, sometimes in late night or mid-afternoon drinking binges to ease said pain. It galvanized them and improved their rapport as they collectively worried about the effect this thing was going to have on their careers. While the movie is stacked with talent, the real breakout here is John Leguizamo as Luigi. This is one of his first starring roles, and it shows on his face that he knows it's his big shot at fame if he can be heard above the noise. Magnetic is overused as an adjective to describe actors, but it fits here. He embodies Luigi with boundless, goofy charisma, and somehow manages to have palpable chemistry with everyone he shares screen time with. He even gets the main romance of the film with Daisy, played by Samantha Mathis, who doesn't get nearly enough to do for how good she is in this. When she's not relegated to the whole damsel in distress role, she really shines.
You really think what I do is interesting?
I think it's incredible.
Well, you know, if you want, I could show you.
I'd love you to show me. Show me.
Luigi is essentially the main character of this Mario movie, and the story is all the better for it, because it allows Bob Hoskins, who plays Mario, to sketch in the details around him. While Hoskins shined as a leading man, he was most in his element as a character actor, and he brings a heap of the same gruff intrigue he brought to Eddie Valiant in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He's so adept at creating these bristly, loud characters who barely hide their soft, sentimental hearts. And his portrayal of Mario is filled with that carefully considered, gentle humanity, and a lot of hilarious or possibly offensive Brooklyn Italian stereotypes.
Are you telling us that you can arrest a guy for being a plumber? Get out of here!
You seriously forget that Bob was a Brit sometimes, you know? Dennis Hopper, on the other hand, did not get down with the whole let's band together kumbaya spirit. The man hated making this movie, and he brought all of his barely concealed disdain to Koopa, using his frustration and annoyance as fuel for his signature, idiosyncratic, terrifying style.
You know what I'm talking about!
No one touches President Koopa!
The man showed up to work, said, "Oh, this is nonsense and nobody knows what they're doing," and proceeded to rip the movie from its hinges at every turn. Worse actors would take the opportunity to kick back and fly under the radar on a movie this chaotic, but not Hopper. Dude was a wild pro, even if he was trying to be a brat. Somehow it elevated the movie. Some actors just can't help themselves in that way. The rest of the cast is fleshed out with great character actors like Fisher Stevens and Richard Edson, who play Koopa's goons Spike and Iggy. They seem like the only guys in this movie who had a good time making it. They rule, not much else to be said there. Love their energy, love their clothes, love that evolving them into hyper-intelligent goons makes them revolutionaries, but still morons. No notes.
Perhaps at this moment of delicacy,
A delicate moment. A retreat is in order.
an ordered retreat.
Before I move on, a special shout out to Fiona Shaw, who plays Lena, Koopa's wife/queen/girlfriend, who gives a raw and fearlessly silly performance, even though her role seems a little bit like plot spackle to keep the second and third acts moving at a better clip. You probably remember her as the mean aunt from those Wizard movies that were popular a decade ago, but are now yet another albatross around the neck of Warner Brothers. But she's also phenomenal in Andor. Super Mario Bros. Was a struggle to make on every level, yes, but the fact that directors Rocky Morton and Annabel Jankel were able to create something so singular and enjoyably odd is a testament to their skills in world building and narrative. You can see the minds who created the subversive, dangerous, and madcap world of Max Headroom all over this dystopian vision of the Mushroom Kingdom. You see, when you hire visionaries, you get, a vision. And with big Hollywood money at play here, Morton and Jankel were able to rope in a stable of creatives that could match their ambition. If this film looks like Max Headroom, Pee-wee, Blade Runner, and Mad Max all got stuck in a rock tumbler together, that's because the production designer, art director, and costume designer all came from those films. All of that talent combined to create audio-visual electricity. It's familiar and alien at the same time. It looks like everything that came before it, and like nothing you've ever seen. It's an exuberant mashup of cyberpunk and diesel punk to create its own bespoke punk, dino punk. Fungus punk, maybe? I don't know, something like that. Everything feels real, even the odd grainy CGI. There's a tactile quality to the design of the world. The latex rubber fungus, the elaborate makeup and prosthetic appliances, the giant lumbering animatronic Goombas, the photorealistic and adorable Velociraptor Yoshi animatronic that barely predated Jurassic Park and asked the important question, what if Scary Dinosaur was friend-shaped? While the physical scale of the Mushroom Kingdom is small in this film, it feels like a real, complete place. Because of how cheap this movie was, about $40 million in 1993 money, or about $80 million today, they focused on depth, not breadth. Every set in Dino New York is connected and somewhat fleshed out. You can see other parts of the city out of the windows of those sets, and it's not a trick. It's not a matte painting or CGI. They just made a real wedge of a city inside of an abandoned cement factory in North Carolina. That's movie magic right there. That's why you cozy up to the money. Super Mario Bros. Is not the totemic, ridiculous, unwieldy disaster critics and fans of the era made it out to be. There's an intentionality to the artistry on display here that shines through the layers of interference. What could have happened if the suits and the money actually let these people make the movie they were trying to make? Perhaps the result would have been bad. Perhaps what we have now is the best it could have possibly been. It's obvious that the film is pieced together with the precision of a jackhammer. The plot, as it is simultaneously dense and thin. It's low on actual story and high on lore and detail. But somehow, through all that, something resonates. Something punches through. This gorgeous disaster constantly surprises you, delighting you with an inventive new visual or charming you with a wacky new set piece or completely ridiculous plot development.
Oh, man.
Well,
At least he was my father.
There are things in this movie I have never seen before and have not seen since. Inexplicable wonders and abundance to be plucked from its hilariously impenetrable lore. At a certain point, the joy of Super Mario Bros. Doesn't come from an intellectual analysis. Arguing about the relative structure of this film is useless at best and missing the point at worst. It's not an experimental film so much as an experiential film. A movie that wants to first transport you so it can then delight you. And while it may have a dark and prickly exterior, it has a firm handle on physical comedy and a sweet goober of a heart that makes it near impossible to truly hate. Like fries and a Frosty, it shouldn't work together, and maybe it's even a bit weird, but it's delicious. And much like that Frosty, it satisfies on an emotional level. I swear I'm not sponsored by Wendy's. I do want a Frosty right now, though. The story has tangible stakes on a personal and existential level, a villain with a clear agenda that reminds me quite a bit of Tron Legacy. I really do have a type, don't I? And a second act that never lets its foot off the gas as it throws more and more fun at the screen. Through all of the 90s nostalgia, goofy sci-fi mumbo-jumbo, and weird snot funguses, it's a simple, well-made adventure story about two guys who find their place in the world as heroes, brothers, and plumbers. That's all well and good, you say, but is it a good Mario movie? That is a loaded question. What do we want out of an adaptation anyway? Is being good not enough? Or is it a matter of one-to-one translation from one medium to another? Obviously you have to change some things, especially in 1993. They weren't going to make it 16-bit. It needs to be live action because that's what sells. But can an adaptation make the world and characters mostly unrecognizable and still call itself a good adaptation? This isn't going to surprise you, but I'm going to argue yes. Sometimes the source material is simply inspiration, a jumping off point. We get too attached to source material sometimes. It's natural. We experience a thing that's important to us and we get wrapped up in how it gets adapted. We want the best for it. We want it to be protected. But that protection can be smothering. Sure, sometimes a bad adaptation can be disappointing, especially if it's the one and only time most people will experience any version of a story, but the reactionary need for lockstep replication is a toxic impulse. It stamps out any possibility of creative choice. Even something as seemingly mechanical as translating text from one language to another has artistry involved. It's interpretation, adaptation even. A good piece of art can be a loose, dismissive, or messy piece of adaptation, but the inverse is infinitely more frustrating. We're back to 2023 now, and the newest Super Mario Bros. Movie has changed the filmic landscape. In the waning days of all-encompassing superhero cinema, Hollywood finally smells a new franchise to exploit, a new cow to cash. Sure, it was somewhat critically disliked, but audiences loved it, and it made billions of dollars. It's basically a one-to-one translation of Mario to the big screen to boot. It's what the fans wanted. Who cares about the old one? The new one worked. Sure, yeah, it's faithful. It has all the right elements, every pixel rendered in stunning 4K high dynamic range. It looks right. It sounds pretty much right. But it's also lifeless, limp. It lacks anything in the realm of forward momentum, or story, or characters, or any kind of emotional response other than the fleeting joy of recognition. It's a crass exercise in brand management and IP exploitation designed for actual adolescents and the audience of grown adult adolescents that feel like they're owed a quote-unquote real Mario movie. In the quest to make something faithful, they removed anything sticky or memorable. It simply exists. And that's all we're left with in this nightmarish dystopia that is Hollywood in 2023. The fact that any movie gets made at all is astounding. They cost so much, and you become beholden to that money. When you're dealing with major corporations that own what you're making a movie out of, that problem increases exponentially. Anytime art escapes from that scenario, it's a miracle worthy of endless praise, even if it's less than perfect. So to restate the question, is 1993's Super Mario Bros. A good movie? Kind of. It's still unclear to me, but I know what it is. It's an artistic statement, made by artists trying to express their will against the overwhelming forces of investment capital and the always looming expectation of profit. They paid the price for that gall, the audacity to have a vision in the face of commerce, with their very careers. And I hope, in some small way, we can honor that sacrifice here. I'm not being ironic or sarcastic. It was a noble and impressive effort. And the way these directors and their film were treated is, from an artistic standpoint, frankly, immoral. This movie has been swept under the rug and forcibly forgotten in the US by all responsible parties, especially Nintendo. You can't even stream it legally. The only way to watch it is to buy an ancient, horrible, letterboxed and pillarboxed DVD, or import the Australian region-free Blu-ray. Do that, by the way. It's a lovely transfer and jam-packed with brand new extras. Somebody, somewhere out there, loves this movie enough to help it survive. The creators behind the most recent Super Mario Bros. Movie took the easy way out. Maybe that's not fair to say. They took the only way out that's available anymore. They bowed in deference to the gaping maw. They accepted the reality that they were little more than shepherds of intellectual property, and they made commerce. Soulless, shiny commerce that turns to ash in your mouth and leaves your head within hours of getting out of the theater. Unless, of course, you find yourself unlucky enough to get that Peaches song stuck in your head. And to be fair, these filmmakers were rewarded handsomely for this newest trip to the Mushroom Kingdom, and it's gonna jumpstart a Nintendo cinematic universe much in the same way that the original producers of the 1993 Super Mario Bros. Movie hoped their film would kick off a video game movie craze. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just a cynical film guy in his 30s who's no longer on the pulse of what society wants. Maybe at the end of the day, we get what we want and what we deserve. But I have one principle as far as movies go. Film is, from its birth and by its very nature, a mixture of art and commerce. One cannot survive without the other. It's one of the few artistic mediums that requires such an outsized investment in capital. So you have to serve both masters in a way. But it's a continuum. You can make good art that's bad product and bad art that's good product. The masterpieces we remember somehow manage to do both. But I'll take bad, weird, misguided, deeply non-commercial art over shiny, overproduced, artless commerce every time. It hasn't steered me wrong yet. Thank you all for watching Too Many Tapes. Please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the bell icon to get updates for when I upload videos. Am I wrong? Is Super Mario Bros. Actually as bad as people say? What's your memory of the first time you saw Super Mario Bros.? Let me know in the comments. If you want to help out a small YouTube channel, consider donating $1 or more a month to my Patreon. For $2 or more a month, you get early access to my videos, as well as my genuine, eternal gratitude for helping me keep this channel going. If you donate $50 or more a month, like Cammy, you're the bomb, and you get a movie recommendation. Of course, it's a video game adaptation. If you're into weird horror, I highly recommend 2006's Silent Hill. It's a fairly successful adaptation of the game that gets the atmosphere and feeling pretty spot on, and it's gorgeous to boot. If you donate $20 or more a month, you're Nato Kitsch, your name is in the credits all huge, and you're the Spike to my Iggy. Sorry bud, I call being Fisher Stevens, no tape backsies. For $10 or more a month, you're adorable animatronic Yoshis, and your names get to be pretty big in the credits too. And for $5 a month, you're the wonderfully gloopy Fungus Among Us, and you get early access to my videos. Thank you all again for watching, and I'll see you next time on Too Many Tapes.
Excuse me. Will you hit me again? I've never seen such fluidity. The way your knuckles burn as you smash them into my face.